I'm not able to share the screen.
1 second. Hi, ma'am. Can you share the screen?
Yeah. Hello, everyone. Welcome to Auricle Exam Mastery Live classes. So we are conducting the Neuroanatomy series. So we have started since June 1st, and these Exam Mastery classes are for a duration of 30 days. So here we are doing rapid revision of all the important questions, quick revision of all the volatile facts, and high-yielding topics of all the subjects are covered here. And most expected questions are also covered. So this is beneficial for all the university exams of all the states. So today's class will be covering some of these questions of neuroanatomy, which are most frequently asked in the exams. So before we go in for the class, let us see some of the core features of Auricle. So Auricle offers live classes as well as recorded classes. We also give you notes, which are CBME-based question and answers, and it also has MCQs, which are frequently asked. So these MCQs are from the beginner level to the expert level. They are standard multiple choice questions. So you can use the code Dr. Divya 20 for the discount on the subscription plans, where we have 3 subscription plans, the basic, standard, and the mentorship program. Mentorship is of 12 months duration, and we are offering at a special rate of 50,000. So here we include pre-recorded classes, live doubt clarification, quick revision examination module. And in addition to this, we also offer you one-to-one personalized guidance as well as notes. And you can use the code Dr. Divya 20 for discount and subscription. You can as well book a slot for personalized counseling session on the Auricle app. So we shall begin with today's class. So today we'll be covering cerebrum. So cerebrum, as we all know, it is the adult. Let me try to put it in a presentation. Right. So I'll just write. Okay. So the cerebrum, so the adult brain, if you all know, it constitutes about 1/50th of the body weight. Okay, so 1/50th of the body weight is made of this, the entire brain. And it weighs about 1,400 grams in males and 1,200 in females. So the brain, when we say, it consists of the cerebrum. Okay, then below that we have the dancephalon, the midbrain, the pons, okay, and the medulla oblongata, which make up the brainstem, midbrain, and medulla oblongata, and also we have the cerebellum. So the cerebrum is the largest part of the brain, and it is known as the pallium. Okay, so it occupies the anterior and middle cranial fossa. Okay, so anterior and the middle in the cranial cavity, it occupies the anterior middle cranial fossa, and the posterior cranial fossa, it occupies the supratentorial part. So this cerebrum, like the entire central nervous system, here also we have gray matter and the white matter. Okay, and there are aggregations of this gray matter, whether concentrated within the white matter, and they are known as the basal ganglia, or the nuclei of the basal ganglia. Okay, so each of the hemispheres Okay, each cerebral hemisphere will contain the diencephalon. That is below, it will have diencephalon. They are basically consists of these neuronal masses. Okay, so and there is a lateral ventricle for the lateral ventricle is basically the cavity of the cerebral hemisphere. Okay, so what happens is when we have the cerebral hemisphere, so each of this, so during the development, we cerebrum is formed from the telencephalon part. So the cavity of that telencephalon is the lateral ventricle. Okay, and the information from one hemisphere, one cerebral hemisphere to the other cerebral hemisphere. So if you see here, here we have okay, so this portion, here we have the corpus callosum. Understand? So this corpus callosum connects the two cerebral hemispheres, and so that the information from one is conveyed to the other, like so from the right to left, left to right. So they are the commissural fibers. Okay, so they are, and also the cerebrum not only is connected to the opposite cerebral hemispheres, it is also connected to the brain stem. So how is it connected? By the projection fibers. Okay, so they are basically the white matter, where we classify them as commissural fibers and the projection fibers. So the cerebrum, it is mainly made up of two cerebral hemispheres, which is separated by a fissure. Okay, so in the center, there will be a fissure, which is called as the median longitudinal fissure. And the two hemispheres, they're connected by the corpus callosum. Each hemisphere will have the ventricle, that is the cavity of the ventricle hemisphere. The cerebrum is the lateral ventricle. External features. So here, if you see the outer part of it, there are three surfaces. Okay, so this is surface, what we are seeing is the superolateral surface. Then there is a medial surface. Okay, the superolateral surface, the medial surface is there. And there is the inferior surface. Okay, so the inferior surface will be divided into anterior orbital and a posterior tentorial surface. It has four borders. So along this line, it is the superomedial border. Okay, then there is the inferolateral border, inferolateral border, and there is an anterior superciliary border. Okay, anterior superciliary border will be in the front. That is when we see it from the base, we will be able to see it. Okay, and medial orbital border and medial occipital border. Okay, so these will be, these are the borders, four borders which are present, and each hemisphere will have a ventricle. Now there are three poles. This is known as the frontal pole, anterior end, posterior end, there is occipital pole, and there is a temporal pole here. Okay. So knowing the sulci gyri is very important. Sulci gyri and what areas it has, okay, is very important, functional areas. So first we will see about the sulci gyri on the superolateral surface. Okay. So here if you see in the center, okay, so first is the cell C. There are, in the brain, there are many sulci gyri, okay, and it is not constant for all the people. It's in the same pattern it is arranged, okay. So it differs from one person to another. But but there are four sulci and sulci, which are actually constant, and they are the central sulcus, the lateral sulcus, the parieto-occipital, okay, parieto-occipital sulcus is yeah, and the calcarine sulcus. Okay, so those four sulci are very constant in all the people. So we consider them as the main ones. So central sulcus. So central sulcus, we will see it at the superomedial border. Okay, so if we take from the frontal pole, okay, frontal pole to occipital pole, if we take the midpoint, just behind the midpoint, we have the central sulcus located. Okay, so this starts here and it runs downwards towards the posterior ramus of the lateral sulcus. Okay, so in front of this portion, we will have the frontal lobe in front of the central sulcus. Okay, then we have the lateral sulcus. So lateral sulcus is this. So this lateral sulcus, it begins from the, that is on the medial side, if you see, or in the inferior surface, we have the anterior perforated substance. From there, it begins and it comes onto this surface. So here it will divide into three. One is the ascending rami, okay, anterior ramus, one ascending ramus, and this is the posterior ramus. So three ramus it extends, okay. And there is the parieto-occipital sulcus. So it is situated on the medial. So from the occipital pole, okay, it begins there on the medial surface. You see it more prominently, and it runs here. Okay, so located on the medial surface, about 5 centimeters in front. So from there, it will appear on this superolateral surface. Then here, calcarine sulcus, we will see it near the, that also begins on the medial surface and comes on to the superolateral surface near the occipital pole. Then just about 5 centimeters in front of the occipital pole, there is a notch. This notch is called as the occipital notch. This is basically an indentation there. Okay. Then here, the lobes. So these are about the sulci and gyri. Now, what are the lobes? So what lobes do we see on the superolateral surface here? How do we divide that? So I told you this is the central sulcus. So in front of that will be the frontal lobe. Okay. So parietal lobe. Now, how do we do the parietal lobe is, so from the, okay. So from the, so this is the notch. Okay. So from the parieto-occipital sulcus, we draw a line downwards. Okay. So we'll draw a line downwards. That is the first imaginary line. And we draw a second imaginary line from the posterior, upturned end of the posterior ramus towards the first imaginary line. Okay. So this portion, what we have here, this will be the parietal lobe. Okay. So this frontal lobe, first we will see the lobes, then I will tell you. So behind this first imaginary line here will be the occipital lobe, and below the second imaginary line, no, which we draw from this posterior ramus down here, this will be the temporal lobe. Okay. So the frontal lobe, no, will have, now this is the central sulcus. Okay. So in front of that, there is again a precentral sulcus. Okay. So this is the precentral sulcus and the precentral gyrus and the precentral sulcus here. So here what happens is, in the frontal lobe, there are three horizontal rami, that is, two, superior and middle. Okay. Superior and middle frontal sulcus, okay, which will divide this frontal lobe into, okay, superior, middle and inferior frontal gyrus. Okay, superior, middle and inferior. Got it? So next is the parietal lobe. So parietal lobe here, okay, behind, this is the central sulcus, this is the postcentral gyrus and the postcentral sulcus. So in front of the postcentral sulcus, there will be a interparietal sulcus. Okay, so this interparietal sulcus, which will divide this parietal lobe into superior parietal lobule and an inferior parietal lobule. Okay, superior and inferior parietal lobule. And then we have the occipital lobe here and the temporal lobe here. So temporal lobe here, again, we have the superior temporal and inferior temporal sulcus, which divides it into superior, middle and inferior temporal gyrus. Okay. And in the occipital lobe, here we have the calcarine sulcus will be here, and like a moon-shaped sulcus will be there, that is called as the lunate here. Lunate sulcus is present there. Okay. So these are the things which you should know in the sulci, among the sulci and gyri. Okay, so next is sulci and gyri on the medial surface. So when we take the sulci and gyri on the medial surface now, one is the cingulate sulcus. Okay, cingulate is here. Okay, so this is the corpus callosum. So it will be running parallel to the corpus callosum here. So this is the portion where we will see it. This is the cingulate sulcus. Now this corpus callosum will have three parts. Okay. So it has the genu, the body, and the splenium. So above that splenium part, there is the suprasplenial sulcus here. Okay. And there is calcarine sulcus. So calcarine sulcus begins near this end of this. We have the splenium, right? So there it begins, and see here, it goes this way. This is the calcarine sulcus. Okay. And above this calcarine sulcus, from midway, here begins the parieto-occipital sulcus, which will go here and appear on the superolateral surface. Then in front of the genu, there will be two small sulci here that are known as the anterior and posterior para-olfactory sulci. Okay. Now, cingulate gyrus. Now, this gyrus here between the corpus callosum and the cingulate sulcus, no? So that is the cingulate gyrus. Okay. So this sulcus here is the callosal. This is the cingulate, and this will be the cingulate gyrus. Then there is the here we have the paracentral lobule. Okay, so the paracentral lobule is very important. So here we have the cingulate sulcus. So cingulate sulcus, what happens is, cingulate sulcus, it gives a upturned end here. Okay, and then it again ends up like this. So this lobe here in between, we call it as the paracentral lobule. Okay, it's a U-shaped gyrus which is present around the central sulcus. Okay, so it includes both the motor as well as the sensory part here. Okay, and this is responsible. So this is the main center, okay, highest center for micturition and defecation. So both the motor and the sensory components of the micturition and defecation act is controlled by there. Okay. Then this is the medial frontal gyrus, which is the area between the cingulate gyrus and the superomedial border. Okay, cingulate gyrus, this portion will be the medial frontal gyrus. Then here, this portion, okay, we call it as the precuneus. And between this parieto-occipital sulcus and the calcarine sulcus, we have the cuneus. Okay, precuneus and the cuneus. Okay, then here, so your small portion that is known as the isthmus between this is the calcarine sulcus, which is beginning here, I told you. So between this and the splenium, this narrow strip, we call it as the isthmus. Okay, and here in the front near the lamina terminalis is basically the anterior end of the neural tube. Okay, so this lamina terminalis, in front of that, there is a paraterminal gyrus. Okay, so then there are para-olfactory gyrus, anterior and posterior, that is in front of this, that is in the lamina terminalis, just in front of that, it will be present. Then in the occipital lobe, okay, not orbital, on the occipital lobe, we have the, sorry, this is orbital only in front, okay. So it is olfactory sulcus. Olfactory sulcus, let me show you here. Okay, this is the olfactory sulcus where the olfactory bulb will be present. And there is a head-shaped orbital sulcus which divides this orbital surface into anterior, posterior, medial, and lateral parts. Okay. Then on the tentorial surface here, if you see, there is the collateral sulcus here and the occipitotemporal sulcus here. Okay, collateral is this one. Okay, this one is collateral, and this one will be the occipitotemporal sulcus. So this portion, we call it as the parahippocampal gyrus, and the anterior end of it is known as the uncus. Okay, and this occipitotemporal sulcus will divide this portion into a medial and lateral occipitotemporal gyrus. Okay, next you should know what is insula. Okay, this is a very important short essay question which they ask you. So insula is also referred to as the insular cortex or simply the insula. Okay, it is also called as the Reel's Island. Okay, Reel's Island it is called. It is a folded region of the cerebral cortex. Okay, so this is basically when the neocortex evolved, this portion it got buried inside. Okay, so it lies deep within the lateral. So this is the lateral sulcus. So this is retracted here, and we can see this insula. Okay. So this is sometimes called as the fifth lobe of the brain, okay, because it is distinctly located. So it's situated between the lateral sulcus, okay, to see that we need to retract the frontal lobe, okay, the temporal lobe part, frontal and the portion of the parietal lobe, we need to retract so that we can see the insula. Function is, it is involved in many functions. Basically, it processes the sensory information, integrates the sensory and emotional experiences, and it regulates the autonomic nervous system. Okay, so it has a very diverse role there. It takes part in taste perception, visceral sensations, okay, as well as emotional responses. Connections, okay, it has various connections, including the limbic system, okay. So it is connects with the limbic system, with the thalamus and the sensory, okay, sensory cortex. So it also interacts with the areas responsible for emotional processing too. So here, if you see the insula has got now this all around, no, this we call it as the circular sulcus here, which is present all around, okay? And in the center, there will be a central sulcus, which will divide it into an anterior part and a posterior part. And in the anterior part, we have a short sulci, which is divides it into short gyri, okay? And whereas posterior, it is long. Okay, so gyri longa and gyri brevia, it is called. This is called brevia. This is called as longa. Okay. Now, based on the types of sulci, based on the function, formation, and depth. Okay, so limiting sulcus. So limiting sulcus, we call it as the central sulcus is the limiting sulcus. Basically, it divides, the frontal lobe as motor cortex, whereas the parietal lobe as the sensory cortex. It divides. Then there is the axial sulcus. Okay, axial sulcus is a type of cerebral sulcus that develops along the rapidly growing areas of the brain. Okay, so that is the axis. Operculated sulcus is basically it is the fold. Okay, opercula means lid. Okay, like a lid. So it is a fold of the cerebral cortex that separates the areas. Okay, and separates two areas, and it will contain 1/3 area in its walls, like the ear. Okay, we have the insula. According to the formation, we have primary sulci, which are formed before birth independently, and secondary sulci, which are basically exuberant growth in the adjoining areas of the cortex. According to the depth, there is complete sulcus, okay, which is elevations in the walls of the lateral ventricle, and incomplete sulcus, which are superficially situated. Now, coming to the structure and functions of cortex. Okay, so functional types of cortex. So we have the, just like other day class we saw in cerebellum, we had the archipaleo and neocerebellum. Here also we have the archipallium. Okay, so this is cerebrum is otherwise called as archipallium too. So allocortex or archipallium. So it is the basically the original olfactory cortex represented by the rhinencephalon. Okay, rhinencephalon. Okay, where the piriform area and the hippocampal formation is there. So basically, it's a small area. So we see it in animals and all, because they are very highly sensitive, okay, to smell. So because that sense was very much essential for them to know, sense any danger, basically, sense any danger, sense any food, okay. So that smell sensation was very, very essential. So that is why it was the first one to develop there. Then we have the isocortex or the neopallium. Neopallium here, it is the lately acquired. So as the name says, neopallium. Okay. So it contains various centers other than those for smell. So it is divided into granular cortex and a agranular cortex. So granular cortex basically has sensory, whereas agranular cortex is motor. So functional areas of the cerebrum. Okay, so we divide them into motor areas and sensory area. Now motor area is which one? The frontal lobe, isn't it? So what are the characteristics of the motor area? It is identified by the eliciting motor responses with low threshold. So how it can be identified? How do we know that motor area is? So we will elicit the motor responses with low electrical stimulation. Okay, so when we stimulate that part of the frontal lobe, there is motor movements. Okay, it gives rises. How does it form? It certain wherever whichever area it is stimulated, there is contractions. Okay, of the skeletal musculature. So here basically the corticospinal corticonuclear fibers, okay, that is from the cortex to the spinal cord, from the cortex to the nuclei, okay, nuclei of cranial nerves and all such things. So sensory areas, again, this also same thing, electrical activity can be recorded, okay, by the appropriate sensory stimuli. So here what happens is the ventral posterior nucleus, ventroposterior nucleus, okay, ventral and posterior nucleus, VP nucleus, okay. Of the thalamus, it is the primary source of afferent fibers which come to the sensory area. Okay. So basically in the thalamic nucleus, all that, the medial lemniscus is mainly carrying the, which sensations? The vibration and proprioceptive sensations, okay, from the opposite side it carries. So spinothalamic tract, okay, again the pain and temperature sensations, trigeminothalamic tract, that is the pain and pain temperature sensations over the face. So they are all carried by these tracts. Association areas here. So as the name says, it's associate. So what does it do? It integrates and analyzes the responses from various sources. Okay. So motor and sensory areas. So it integrates that. Okay. So motor sensory areas will have a predominant motor function, whereas sensory motor areas will have a predominant sensory function. Okay, and some areas will have, that is what is meant here, both functions. Now, functional areas in the superolateral surface of the brain. So, superolateral surface functional areas, when we say, okay, we divide it into the frontal lobe, the parietal lobe, the occipital, and the temporal. So, what are the functional areas there? So, first is the primary motor area. So, primary motor area, okay, so now we are talking about the frontal lobe here. So it is situated, it is in the precentral gyrus. So as the name says, precentral. So it is situated in front of the central sulcus, okay. It is area number 4, Brodmann's area number 4. So this stimulation of this, it will induce this muscle contraction with ipsilateral control for the head and axial muscles. Okay, so the head will not show any this thing, but movements. So it basically controls the head and axial muscles. The contralateral, so here in this area, what happens is the opposite half of the body is represented upside down. Okay. So, and the intrinsic, very fine muscles, okay, which bring about the fine movements like the hand, okay, the head region, the muscles of the face, they are all have a very high representation there. Okay, so basically, the smaller the motor unit, the larger will be the representation there. Okay, so you can see how big the representation is, whereas the limbs have a very small representation there. Okay, so connections of the motor area. So efferent areas, that is from the ventral nucleus of the thalamus. So it is the primary motor area, what we are talking about here, area number 4. Okay, so here it receives the afferents from the ventral nucleus of the thalamus, contralateral cerebral hemisphere, and as well as from the opposite hemisphere. Efferents means the which are going away from there. So they are the corticonuclear, corticobulbar, and corticospinal tracts. Okay, and frontopontine fibers, which project and projection fibers to the basal ganglia. Then there is premotor area. Now this is the premotor area. So premotor area is area number 6. Okay, area number 6. So area number 6 is situated anterior to the motor area. It contributes to the motor function, and what it does is coordinates the motor function. So it brings about the skilled motor activity. Okay, so it is together with this primary motor area, we call it as the somatomotor area. Then we have supplementary motor area. Supplementary motor area is situated on the medial surface of the hemisphere. Okay, just anterior, that is the medial frontal gyrus. No, so there it is situated. So what does it do? It controls complex movements. It will help in the control. Then an important area we have to know is the motor speech area of Broca. Broca's area separately can be asked as a 3-mark question. So you need to know about that. So what is this Brodmann's area? This is the area number 44 and 45. So here, no, this is the lateral sulcus. Okay, so lateral sulcus will come here and it will divide into 3 ramus. Okay, so if we see here, it will divide into an anterior and one ascending. Okay, and there will be the posterior rams. So between these areas, this is known as the triangular area. No? This is the pars triangularis. This is the pars orbitalaris. This is the pars opercularis. So Broca's area includes pars opercularis and this pars triangularis, that is area number 44 and 45. Okay, so this area, one thing you should remember is this Broca's area is mainly situated not on both the hemispheres. It is situated only on the predominant hemisphere, means in the dominant hemisphere. Okay, so if it is in the right-handed individuals, it is situated on the left side. Okay, so because the right side movements are controlled by the left side, isn't it? So that is why. Then we have an area called as frontal eye field. Now, frontal eye field, I told you here, if we draw, like, you know, we have the superior and inferior frontal sulcus, no, we draw. Okay, it divides into superior, middle, and inferior frontal lobules, frontal gyrus, isn't it? So, in the middle frontal gyrus, okay, so in the middle frontal gyrus, just anterior to the precentral gyrus, this area, we call it as the frontal eye field area. Okay, so basically this is brings about like if we ask you to move your eyes as I move the finger, so it is a voluntary movement of the eyeballs, isn't it? So voluntary movements of the eyes. So it brings about this. It controls the voluntary movements of the eye. Okay, so that is the frontal eye field. So it's basically in conjugation with the occipital lobe, that is, which controls, which is responsible for the vision. Okay, so it will help. Then prefrontal cortex. So this area in front, rest of the area, we call it as the prefrontal cortex. Okay, so this is area number 9, 10, 11. So it is a large area anterior to the precentral. This will include the superior, middle, and inferior frontal gyri. That is what the anterior part. Okay. So this prefrontal area is very much responsible for the control of emotions, concentration, attention, initiative. That is basically, in general, to say social, moral, ethical behavior. Everything is controlled here. Okay. So this has a reciprocal connections with the thalamic dorsomedial nucleus. hypothalamus and the limbic system. Okay. So usually in the exam, you can write like this, make 3 columns, the cortical area, the location and characteristic. You can also make one more column is talking about the lesion, what happens. So primary motor area, area number 4, you need to mention the area number 4, okay. So it is located in the precentral gyrus. Okay, so anterior wall of the central sulcus and anterior paracentral lobule. Okay. So characteristics, it corresponds to Brodmann's area number 4. So it elicits muscle. So what happens is primary motor area, no? In a simple words to remember is, it basically controls the contralateral side. That is the voluntary movements of the contralateral or the opposite half of the body. Okay. So that is controlled by the primary motor area. So the connections are efferents from the thalamus, cerebellar hemispheres, and opposite cortical area. So from there, the afferents come towards the cerebrum. Whereas efferents, which go away, they come from the corticonuclear, corticobulbar, corticospinal tracts, frontopontine fibers, and projection fibers to the basal ganglia. Then we have premotor area number 6. So Brodmann's area number 6, as I said. So it is anterior to the precentral gyrus, isn't it? So it's anterior to the primary motor area. So this will contribute to the motor function, that is program skill. Now, okay, so program skill movement in the sense, now I want to lift up something. Okay, so there is my hand goes, it holds, take holds of it and lifts it. So that is a program skill motor activity. So, it's a part of the somatomotor area, and here the corticospinal and the corticonuclear fibers originate. Okay, and also it receives fibers from the cerebellum with relay in the ventral intermediate nucleus of the thalamus. Then we have supplementary motor area. Supplementary motor area is present on the medial surface of the hemisphere anterior to the paracentral lobule, that is the frontal medial frontal gyrus it is situated. Okay, so here it is controls all the complex movements like those of the hand and all, very fine precise movements, intrinsic movements it controls. Motor speech area, already we discussed it. So area number 44, 45, that is pars apicularis and pars triangularis. Okay, it occupies. So basically this area is present mainly in the dominant hemisphere. Frontal eye field. Frontal eye field, okay, so it is the posterior part of the medial frontal gyrus. So it causes conjugate, okay, this causes conjugate eye movement, excuse me. So conjugate eye movements, and it is connected to the occipital lobe, okay, frontal lobe. That's what I told you, so it moves, voluntary movements of the eye. Okay, it is controlled by the frontal eye field. Then we have the prefrontal cortex. So it is a large area in front of the precentral region. Okay, so prefrontal cortex. So this prefrontal area, so all the areas, that is the superior, middle, and the inferior frontal gyrus. The entire part is Brodmann's area number 9, 10, 11. So this one will control emotions, concentration, attention, initiative, and judgment. Okay, so it has reciprocal connections. This is basically the summary of whatever we studied. Reciprocal connections with the thalamic dorsomedial nucleus, hypothalamus, and the limbic system. And it is connected to other areas of the cortex, corpus striatum, thalamus, and cerebellum through pontine nuclei. Okay, then we have secondary or somesthetic or somatosensory area. So this is present in the superior lip of the posterior ramus of the lateral sulcus. Okay, posterior. So here we have this secondary somesthetic or somatosensory area. So it is known as the second somatosensory area. Okay, so this area is the highest, very sensitive to pain. That is, highest sensation of pain is felt in that area. It basically controls that. Okay, okay. Okay, then we have that is okay. So we have the primary sensory area here, area number 312, that is the post-central gyrus. No, post-central gyrus here, we have area number 312, which basically controls, that is the, receives the sensations from opposite half of the body. What sensations? Pain, touch, temperature, proprioceptive sensations are received there. Okay, and somaesthetic somatosensory association area here, okay, is present in the superior parietal lobule, okay, on the superolateral surface of the hemisphere, and in the precuneus of the medial surface. Okay. So this is area number 5 and 7. 5 and 7. Okay, 5 and 7. Now, this is very important. This is also known as the sensory association area. So, this is basically responsible for what we call it as stereognosis. Stereognosis, when we say what? With the eyes closed, we are able to feel an object, isn't it? And we are able to shade the shape of it, the size of it, and we are able to identify whether it is a pen or it is a coin or whatever subject we are holding. With our closed eyes, we are able to say that. That is known as the ability of stereognosis. Okay, so that is controlled by this area number 5 and 7. Then we have the sensory speech area. Sensory speech area here, it is located. Now, if you see here, so this is the region. Okay, so this is the posterior end of the posterior, that is the end of the posterior ramus of the lateral sulcus. Okay, so above that, here we have the angular gyrus. Okay, and here we also have this one. This is the superior temporal sulcus. So here also above that we have the gyrus. So area number 39 and 40. Okay, so this area number 39 and 40, they are known as the sensory speech area. Now, the Broca's area. Broca's area was the motor speech area. So what it does, motor speech area? Motor speech area, see, as the name says, motor. Right? So it controls the, basically supplies the muscles, right? So whichever muscles are responsible for articulation, like the muscles of the larynx, the muscles of the tongue, okay, they are all responsible for the, to produce the sound, right? To produce the voice or produce what I'm now I'm talking, these muscles are acting. So that is controlled by Brodmann's area. So when Brodmann's area is affected, what happens? If there is a lesion in the Brodmann's area, I am able to understand what you are asking. Okay, your question, everything I'm able to understand, but I'm not able to articulate. It's like, you know, in the exam, when the examiner asks you, it's not because your Broca's area is affected, but the thing is the way the response is. That's exactly the response when Broca's area is affected. Okay, you stammer, you like, you know, though you know the answer, you have understood the question, because of the stress, you're not able to answer it. Right? Something similar to that happens when the Broca's area is affected. Whereas the sensory speech area, when it is affected, what happens? Sensory speech area here. Okay, so in Broca's area, the speech will be affected. Okay, so they will not be able to tell the sentence very clearly. Whereas sensory speech area, what happens? Very non-coherent speech means the person doesn't understand what we are talking or what we are saying or asking, and the patient will answer very differently. Okay, you ask what's your name, he will tell this is cat, okay, or this is a book, something like that. So he will answer very incoherently or not related at all. Okay, so that is the sensory speech area function. So areas of special sensations now. Okay, so areas of special sensations, we have vision. So this is located above. This is the calcarine sulcus here, right? So this is located above. And below the calcarine sulcus, on the medial surface of the occipital lobe, as well as here also it comes. So it corresponds to area number 17. Okay, so this area is also called as the striate area. So it is the primary visual area. Okay, so it contains the line of Jennari and receives afferent fibers from the lateral geniculate nucleus of the thalamus. So continuous with this with this will be the area number 18 and 19 forming visual association area. Now, what is this? So there is a primary visual area and there is a visual association area. So primary visual area means when we are seeing, we are able to see, we are able to see things, right? So that is what controls. So we are able to notice things, whether it is basically the color, the shape, everything we are able to see. So that is controlled by the primary vision area. Whereas the visual association area, now we see something, right? We see a tree. To say it is a tree, with the previous memory, we are able to identify that that is a tree. This is a pen, that's a phone, or something like that, okay? Because that thing, that association area will help to identify the objects or the things which we see. Okay, so that is the visual association area, area number 18 and 19. So if the vision area, the primary vision, of course, we cannot see, we become blind. But when visual association area is affected, we are able to see, but we are not able to say what the object is. Okay, so that is the difference there. Hearing. So hearing area, it lies in the temporal lobe. Okay, hearing. So area number 41 and 42, okay, corresponding to area number 41 and 42. So it is situated on the, okay, so area, the primary hearing area, no, auditory area, primary auditory area is situated on the anterior surface of the superior ramus, superior anterior surface, okay, it is situated on the, superior surface of the superior temporal gyrus, superior surface of the superior temporal gyrus, it is situated. Okay, so main source of fibers which are coming to this area is from the medial geniculate body. So this is the primary hearing area. So what does it do, primary hearing area? Okay, so we are able to hear the pitch of the sound, the loudness of the sound, okay, the okay, and okay, so basically we are able to hear it. Okay, then there is area number 22 here, which is situated on the lateral surface of the superior temporal gyrus. So that is known as the visual association area, just like how we had the, not the auditory association area, like just like how we had the visual association area. Similarly, we have the auditory association area. Now, what does this area do? Area number 22. So now when we hear a sound, okay, but what that sound is, from where it is coming, whether it is the sound of the fan, whether it is of some, what is that, drum sound or some bell ringing, we are able to identify because of the auditory association area. So this auditory association area tells us with our previous memory, okay, this is the sound of the bell, this is the sound of the fan. Understand? So that is what it is. Then taste sensations. Taste is located in the dorsal wall of the posterior ramus of the lateral sulcus. Okay, so taste sensations are located here. It corresponds to Broadband's area number 43. Okay, so basically it will be very closer to where the tongue is represented. Then the smell area is situated in the pyriform lobe. Okay, and vestibular area. Okay, so they're situated close to the part of the post-central gyrus concerned with sensations of the face. Okay, so this is how the different areas are situated and functions. Okay, functions of cerebral cortex now, the cerebral dominance. So what is cerebral dominance? So one hemisphere dominates the other in handedness, speech, language perception, and spatial judgment. So the dominant lobe always contains Broca's motor speech area. The left hemisphere controls the right half of the body in right-handed individuals. So the left hemisphere is basically, it is associated with, okay, in right-handed people, no? The left hemisphere is dominant, and left hemisphere is dominant in verbal, mathematical, analytical, scientific, and calculative functions, okay? Left side, verbal, mathematical, analytical, and scientific and calculative functions. Whereas the right hemisphere is more creative. It processes geometrical figures, imaginative and artistic tasks, okay? Religious experiences, temporal sense, everything is from the right hemisphere. Okay, it also plays a role in recognizing faces, figures, and appreciating music. Localization of speech is on the left side in 70% because most of the people 70% of the left side individuals, 90% of the right-handed individuals. So the sensory cortex is not only concerned with the recognition, involves in discriminating sensory functions like recognition of spatial relationships, like in relative to the space or the around us, we are able to recognize. Okay, so graded response to stimuli of different intensities, appreciation of similarities and differences in external objects which are brought in contact with the surface of the body. So all these things it is able to discriminate and say clearly. Associative functions. So it basically forms the association between the memory patterns. Information is transmitted to the frontal cortex, where it will synthesize and forms the basis of thinking and related in the intellectual activities. Okay. So when that information, so it will be processed there in the frontal. So that is why in dementia and all, when that area is affected, they are not able to process it and they are not able to remember things. Okay, so we'll see some case scenario. A patient presents with difficulty in initiating complex motor movements, such as playing a musical instrument. Upon examination, it is noted that the primary motor area is intact. Which area might be implicated and what specific function could be affected? Okay, so here is the keywords you should see. It is the difficulty in initiating a complex motor movement. And when examination, the primary motor is intact, but so which area is affected? Okay, complex motor, they're not able to do. So it is given as supplementary motor area, premotor area, frontal eye field, motor speech area. So which one? The supplementary motor area is affected because that is involved in the controlling. Supplementary motor area where it is the medial frontal gyrus. Okay. Next, second case scenario here, a patient experiences altered sensations in the lower limb. Okay, so there is altered sensations in the lower limb with abnormal spatial recognition and discrimination of stimuli. Which area is affected? Okay, so altered sensation. Basically, the sensory part is affected. So we'll see which one. So first, somesthetic area. Second, that means the primary sensory area and the sensory association area, okay, and vestibular area. So here it is the somesthetic association cortex, okay, that is which is affected. So it is responsible for the spatial recognition and discrimination of the sensory stimuli. A patient exhibits difficulty recognizing familiar faces and experiences visual disturbance. Which lobe is affected? Occipital, frontal, parietal, occipital, temporal, occipital lobe. Okay. A patient complains of altered sense of taste. Which part of the insula is likely implicated in these symptoms? Anterior insular cortex, posterior, middle, and superior. Okay. So here the anterior is affected because it is associated with olfaction and taste, and damaged this region, it results in taste changes in the taste perception. A patient complains of difficulty recognizing familiar faces and shows deficits in spatial judgment. Okay, which visual area is affected here? The visual area, because this is association. It can see faces, but is not able to say whose face it is. Okay, so that is what happens. It is the association area which is affected, area number 18 and 19. So that is the visual area above the calcareal sulcus. Okay, that is the association area. Okay, so we end the class at here. So thank you for watching Auricle. So for more content, you can follow the social media handles on YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, and Telegram. And if you haven't yet downloaded the app, you can get it on Google Play or download it on App Store. And you can begin your journey with Auricle and improve your grades as well as score in the exams. So until then, next time.